Today's episode discusses mental illness, specifically bipolar I disorder. If you or someone you know is struggling with emotional symptoms that you don't understand, please ask for help from a trusted person in your life.
Hey, Miss Tiro.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's been so
It
long.
has, wow. How many years, huh?
It's many. It's many. Oh, you
Yeah.
look good.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Hello and welcome to Change for the Better, the Power of Arts in Education, episode 19. I'm Stacey Tiro, a high school performing arts teacher for over 25 years. I've taught a lot of amazing people. Now that so many of my students are adults, they'll teach me how, through the lessons in my classroom, they have been changed for the better. Of the many adolescents that I've had the honor to work with, most of them have in some way, shape, or form been performers on stage or taken my dance class or, been part of the sort of the performing part of the performing arts stuff. But there's another just as important aspect to theater. And this group of kids that I had connected to over the years never stepped foot in a spotlight. They preferred that sort of silent ninja moniker and working behind the scenes, behind the curtains, up in the booth, in the catwalk, painting, building. And it's these kids who are the designers, the technicians, the board operators, the running crew members. They all help to assemble the pieces of the production and make the shows function like a well-oiled machine. And I have to say, these people are very well trained. This young man who is before me is a graduate of 2007. And he was one of those silent ninja kids, my warriors. And like Greg Kreindler, who was from episode 13, a couple episodes ago, he had no interest in being in the spotlight, not at all. He preferred to operate in the shadows and quickly move set pieces on and off the stage in like less than 5 seconds. And I relied on guys like him and gals like him to understand and to execute those crew tasks that always made Thespian productions work. They just worked. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think I remember your shadowy figure running and like doing a front roll off the
Yes,
stage in a
you got
blackout.
it. You got it.
I remember that. I do remember that. I went, what was that? Oh, that was, yeah. So since graduation, he's been in and out of like academic programs and the workforce, all while trying to navigate some pretty significant mental health issues. And I'm sure you'll talk about that. But his ultimate goal, he shared with me, is to continue his own path to healing and to go back to school and to finish his studies so that he can work in the field of psychology and make his own contribution to the world from a holistic and trauma-informed mental health approach, which I think is a noble and very necessary thing for people to have access to. So without any further ado, I will start with the first question, which is, what is your name, the year that you graduated, which I already said that, so you don't have to say that, and tell me a little bit more about what you do now and your place in the world.
All right. Wow. Thank you for the introduction. Um, So, my name is Rob, graduated 2007.
Mhm.
And what am I doing right now? So, I'm working and living at an ashram. Actually, I guess in a way, all of my work contributes to the guests that come here, searching or looking for a place to rest, and then just doing my own healing in hopes that I can help others with the knowledge that I'm gaining, as well as harnessing positivity and that light and being able to share that eventually. So I guess I'm in a place of transformation right now.
Listen, I've been doing this now since February. It's a couple months that we've been doing this. And every person that I talk to they've got their own sort of definition of their journey and whatever their successes or their struggles are. Let me start by saying that most of the people who I have talked to have in some way, shape, or form had some sort of significant mental health struggle. That is like a regular running theme in this podcast. And it wasn't planned that way, but I think
Mm.
it certainly illuminates the very, very real existence of mental health being something that, can make or break somebody's experience.
Oh yeah.
So I'm actually quite grateful that you are willing to talk about, this place where you're in, this kind of
Yeah.
transformation place.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting information that you're finding. And through my own searches, I think that that's just kind of part of, I guess, growth, And I think it's depending on the scale and intensity, and it depends on our society too. We have different labels and different places to fit people into. Over my journey, I've learned to become a little bit more comfortable with sharing, what's going on with myself. And I typically find a situation as you get through this journey, you start to pick out when people are struggling or when they're hiding things and they don't feel secure in sharing. And I share it quite often, here with guests that come by. It's like, yeah, I was diagnosed bipolar 1, but there's so much more to these conditions that, the DSM has.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that you have been diagnosed and that are willing and able to pursue the path of healing, because that's no joke.
Yeah,
That's a
I
tough diagnosis.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely it was a very rough struggle for 6 years. I guess even more so, maybe 8. Yeah.
Mm.
But and I think probably back in my junior year to senior year, you actually probably witnessed part of that. And it was when I think I was nominated to be something in like leadership thing, and I completely turned it down. I was really struggling through something along that lines, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah,
I kind of sort of remember that, and it doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does happen. And
yeah,
at the time, and what was this, 15 years ago or so?
yeah. I think it was 15 or more.
Then I try and consider myself a pretty empathetic person, educator, yada yada yada. My hope is that I handled that with
Yeah.
respect and gave you the space to feel okay
Yes.
saying, yeah, no, that's
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was great because I think I was struggling through something, and although like so I definitely didn't want something to happen, and then you and Iris was okay with that. And so like
mm,
it was done in a way where I didn't feel ostracized and feel like I had to leave, and I was still part of
yeah.
Thespians, which is very important.
Using your adult brain, describe your adolescent self.
Okay. Um, it's tough looking back. I mean,
Mm,
so I was going through, I guess, the process in a way. And at the time, I was really struggling. I just didn't know I was.
mm,
And I never quite knew how to ask for help.
sure.
But I had a lot of fun in high school, I guess, despite the other side of things. There's a balance, but yeah, especially when it came to thespians, there's a special place in my heart for that experience.
Can
Yeah,
you describe the what that mental health, what the bipolar mental health issue like
yeah.
looks like or feels like to a teenager?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, at the time, it's hard to go back just because
Right.
there's so many pieces of discovery. But the biggest thing I think was for me was that I felt so forced and compelled to do everything. And I was really like a rush seeker at the time. And I'm sure you probably noticed that with the rows and flips and running around. And yeah, and like I think it was the ladders. I remember I had gotten there from another student, that fellow thespian who was skateboarding, and I joined in. I was like, whoa, look at those ladders. I need to be on top of that ladder. I got into lighting, right? So there's a rush, and that rush I think that you see in adolescence. A lot of people that are driven to drive at extreme speeds in the cars and the highways and look like almost reckless, and there's this pull. I guess that's the one thing that may be able to may be able to easily recognize and resonate with. And that's something that I would say when you're toward an extremity, that could be a sign to start questioning a little bit. And it's like with all the knowledge that I've gained, it's hard to say with every case, we all have a different path, and sometimes it takes certain things for us to learn and realize before we open up to more. Yeah, I think that's the closest one I can
Yeah,
give.
no, I
Yeah,
think that's important. I think I wanna
yeah,
do a little bit of research on that and
yeah,
include that in the blog, 'cause you can see when
yeah.
kids have anxiety, or you can see when kids sort of have depression, but the more
Right,
really, like, heavier diagnosable things that
right,
a lot of our kids don't have the
exactly.
resources, the mental health
Yeah,
resources to,
and
like,
that's the
get properly diagnosed, you know?
right, and it actually, so I can talk a little bit more about bipolar, and the whole diagnosis and everything, and
Mhm,
I, of course, come from a little bit of a perspective from, holistic standpoint, but
mhm,
I definitely still go by, a similar line of the DSM. I'm not, like, completely rejecting it. And so I think the hardest part and the reason why I phrased it and shared that piece of it is just because it's hard to know what you're going through as an experiencer. And as far as like depression or anxiety, and so like with bipolar, there's this aspect, mania. The thing is that there's a common theme in both of these, and it's the suppression of emotions.
mhm,
And so with that type of thing, it becomes hard because, like for myself, I didn't really know what I was experiencing in a way,
mhm,
even though other people may have saw that. So although I may have had facial and emotional expressions, I
mhm.
wasn't really that connected to that. My really close friend from younger would say, like, Rob, I love that you can never lie. I was like, what? I don't get that. And it was because I had been lying to myself. I never saw that I was always presenting the truth in my facial and emotional expressions and tone, but I just couldn't recognize that. It's complex. So with bipolar and bipolar 1, the main difference between two is that there is a major manic episode, which basically means that it includes a wider range of things that could include what mainstream calls psychosis.
Mhm,
And so that could be rapid thoughts, speech, grandiosis, delusions, and so forth, all the way up to the realm, no sleep, very, very agitated almost in a way. And usually most people can feel it, like they seem like they're happy and elated and euphoric even, but then there's like something off about it. And so as an experiencer, I think it's really hard to pick up on that, but I think other people can reflect. It depends on the level. And of course, like if you are going through mood swings, that's kind of a sign,
mhm,
especially with depression. That's a big one. So yeah, so these like things that you had mentioned, anxiety, depression, and then mania, those are kind of telltale signs that something is going on. The diagnosis of bipolar isn't, I wouldn't say like it's in my perspective, it's not the best label or condition or like way of conceptualizing what's going on. So it's part of the picture. As I've done my research and go through, I started realizing that, and there's a really good book, The Body Keeps the Score
mhm.
by Bessel van der Kolk. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
I haven't, but I'll
totally, totally recommend it.
mhm,
Yeah, he really charted out what happens in mental health with comorbidity that I call like co-diagnosis,
mhm,
and why there's so many things that seem to match up. Like, why are people getting diagnosed with bipolar, ADHD, depression, or whatever? Why are they linking up, and like what's the similarity? And one of the big things is it's suppression and it's trauma. And there are other diagnoses like developmental trauma disorder or complex trauma disorder, and these are things that aren't accepted, so they've been rejected by the APA,
mhm,
the American Psychological Association.
mhm,
But basically, some kind of trauma happened or something early life, and it may be repeating. And then the trail kind of ends up being that you start to suppress more and more of your things. And around that like 15 to like 22 or so age,
mhm,
that little pinnacle point, that's where like sometimes the suppression hits the high threshold and things start to happen. And that's where like you'll find this whole correlation between bipolar, PPD, borderline personality disorder,
Mhm.
schizophrenia, and so forth. And they all share things in common. Is like if you dive into the neurobiological system, like the polyvagal theory is something
Yes,
people can look into, and you're familiar with that one.
I am.
Um, yeah, so then you can start to see like there's this what they call shutdown or
Yes,
suppression or
yes,
control
right.
happening.
That's probably a whole
Oh
other
yeah,
discussion,
yeah,
but, all of these things that you're saying, like, have
yeah,
sort of come across my ears and my experience, and it's like, "Oh, it happens to many more people than than I
yeah,
realize."
yeah.
But that
You know,
polyvagal theory is actually quite powerful. So, you dealing with all of this as the adolescent, was there anything in your thespian experience in the theater that actually helped you to manage or to regulate all of that mania?
I think this is why like I hold it in such such value. My experience there. One of the big things I think was community, and then also the acknowledgement and just the whole experience there. So like prior to that, I would say I didn't know what it felt like to really belong to a community. And that was my first experience. My family dynamics is very different and nothing close to that. And so that was very essential. Community, I think, is one of the most powerful elements when it comes to regulation, co-regulation. And it's probably the fastest changing like catalyst element when somebody's struggling when you're in a community because it can really pull you out and it can really let you be yourself and share, especially when it's a safe environment. So that was very powerful. And then came the motivating factor for me. I was struggling ever since like fourth grade with academics, and I'd completely lost it. And I didn't do well in the rest of high school
Mm,
entirely.
mm,
But Thespians helped me hone and see that I have all of these abilities, even though I might not be able to read or write as well as others, and do these tests. I had very high technical abilities and I was doing sound, lighting, and I remember hopping all over the place and helping people and they're like, "Oh yeah, come help with this and this and that." And I was like, "Whoa." And it really helped me feel like I had something to offer and there was something I was good at, especially when I was really suffering with that.
Well, and I think, like, to sort of dovetail the offering of the officer experience, we all saw that. Like, we saw you as a leader. And I think that was like where my natural instinct was like, oh, get this guy on the board. Because he is a leader. You were leading people without even, having the title. And title
Right.
notwithstanding, that's
Yeah.
just who you were. So trying to sort of extrapolate that out into hopefully your future, I think you have the tools and you have the power to really help educate other people who are in need. That's just part of, I think, who you are.
Yeah, thank you. I've been kind of realizing that along the way
Hmm.
too, and still slowly emerging out as you know, that aspect of myself.
Well, everybody
But
finds their
yeah.
path on their own time. I've learned anything, I've learned that.
Yep, same here.
What are some of the lessons that you learned there in thespians that you think about or that you use today?
So there's one that always comes to mind, and it was actually between you and me and another fellow thespian. And for some reason, it just like when I thought of this and talking to you, that just came up to mind. And it was when me and this other fellow thespian, we were working in building the sets,
Mhm.
and I think it was Matt. And so we were talking to him in a very disrespectful way. And you came over and you just gave us this little lecture, a small little thing, and that just hit me so hard to be respectful to someone who is genuinely offering his time to teach you something and being patient with you and not looked down on or get so built high. And so, I mean, that's youth, right? But that was a powerful lesson that stuck with me, is that respect.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and listen, so many lessons nowadays. It's like, what are you saying? How are you speaking in this way?
Yes.
These are people who are trying to help you. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm glad that that came out. How have you changed since you graduated high school?
Wow. I think quite a bunch. First off, really I got into meditation, where it really helped me learn to regulate myself and get out of this whole um what like mainstream might call this bipolar diagnosis, in a way, of symptoms of
Mm.
mania and so forth. I'm no longer driving 100 and something on the highway. I'm very respectful.
Thank
I'm
you.
very, yeah, very cautious of everybody, and take a lot of care in what I do in the world. Then eventually came a time when I spent a few months in a community, an organic farm, where I felt safe to be myself and finally access my emotions for the first time in 30 years. And so that put me onto emotions. And since then, it's been quite an emotional journey, a learning journey. So, quite a bit of a difference, I would say.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
I'm genuinely excited that that door has opened because, emotions, as hard as they can be sometimes, it's like the feel good emotions and the feel less good emotions. When you can be in touch with them, it just makes the human experience so much richer. And then to
Yeah.
be able to process your emotions, especially when they're not feel so good, and not like send you over the edge. um that's what we need as human beings, and as community, as a culture, as a culture of humans. So I'm happy that you found that. What would your now adult self tell your high school self now to help ease the way?
The biggest thing, and I kind of thought about this a little bit, but the biggest one is asking for help and realizing that there are a lot of people out there that do understand. I would say that we get caught up in our world, and especially with the struggles, sometimes we feel like no one gets it.
Mm.
Absolutely have no idea what we're going to, and all alone in the world. But there are a lot of people out there, and I think especially the adults that have been through quite a similar journey, I would say,
Mhm.
asking for help. But I know how hard that is. And I think the next thing I would say is that when you feel comfortable with that person, that's the one that you ask for help from. Sometimes it's really hard. And it doesn't even have to be direct, probably just as close as you can get.
Mm.
That's what I would say.
That's a good one. They don't know how to ask for help. Uh,
Yeah.
I should say many of them, some of them don't know, truly don't know. Some of them don't think they need help. Uh,
Yeah.
some people are afraid for
Yeah.
lots of different reasons.
Hmm.
Um, there are students now that I've been like, I think, I really, really think either you should try and pursue some therapeutic intervention, talk to your parents, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, because
Yeah.
sometimes they'll come to me and I'm like, I'm happy to
I,
help in whatever way I can, but I'm not a therapist and you need a therapist.
yeah. Yeah.
That's it's a struggle. What is something that you're grappling with now?
Oh, okay. I've been on quite a journey, and after some meditation, studying psychology for a semester, although I didn't finish,
Mhm.
plant medicines, and then which brought me over here to an ashram, and just a lot of, I would say, high frequency thoughts, or more consciousness thoughts, and thoughts about out of ego and things. And so what I'm really working with right now is like stabilizing and growing. Stabilizing, and it's a weird sense, when I talk about awakenings, most people probably don't know where I'm going, but it's kind of what I would say what I'm feeling and working through is where there's this mask, I think, most people would get that I've put on for so many years of my life. And I'm learning to, I guess, remove that mask and come back to a more authentic self, you can so speak. Something beneath all of those conceptual thoughts and layers that we've put to protect ourselves or to get through whatever it is that we got through.
Mm-hmm.
So reconnecting with that essence and then just grappling with, I guess, and there's a like a myriad of just different traumas over the life, but they all have attachments, so to speak. And so just processing and working through them as they go, but managing the levels and looking at like, oh wow, this is putting me, this is pulling me out. So let me come back down on the level of attachment. I'm referring to some Toltec wisdom, but basically just how attached we get to something that we think we need to be loved, but we don't really. It's like conditional love, so to speak. We all work through, I think, different areas of our life in different times, in different ways. And I'm kind of working through now personality growth, a big one, letting out all these pieces of myself that I haven't had the time to really integrate or, mature with. Even though there's this big, mature part of me, there's a lot of little fragments, so to speak, that are starting to come out. And even like the leadership thing, this was something that actually was manifesting here where suddenly I'm pulling people together to work on a community farm. And it's like, whoa, what am I doing? But I guess it's been in me,
Go with
Um,
it. Go with it. Definitely.
yeah.
We're doing a little, not comparison, but a look back and a look forward. Tell me one thing that you miss about your high school self and one thing that has gotten better since you graduated, since you've become an adult.
First thing that comes to mind was the freedom in a way of just being a part of myself. It's it's hard to look at it with the adult lens for part of this, and yet it makes sense to me at least. And
Mhm.
the recklessness, the the just like going out and jumping and flipping, and like it was as if like there's no, there was like I didn't worry about the future, and I guess in a way it's still kind of the same, but that aspect, that innocence, or that just going with it, whatever, and I think that's the aspect I definitely miss the most. And now my body has grown older. It's not the same. I can't go and jump off a floor or something. Now I
Yeah.
look at little kids, even like a two, like a 5-year. I'm like, I gotta teach him how to roll. He's gonna hurt his knees like this, you know.
It's true. The
Um,
body, the body, we push it and we try, but it does not feel the same.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have seen some of your clips of you flipping and everything, which is amazing.
But I do it on all soft, squishy surfaces. So
Yes.
be
Yeah.
nice to the joints.
Yeah. So things have gotten better. Um, I was always around people when I was younger, and even communities like Thespian, but I couldn't feel that connection, so to speak, very deeply.
Mhm.
So it was surface, and I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't, even though I was with community, with people, friends, and I didn't have the same connection that I do now. Where there was so many layers of protection for me that I thought, oh, whatever, I'm doing this just to show off or whatever. And I pushed things aside. I avoided a lot of emotions in a way. But nowadays, when I spend time with people and I'm really in tune, I can really feel that connection. And that's something that has gotten a lot better. So not feeling alone all the time.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Encapsulating everything. If you could give a piece or several pieces of sage advice to high school students now, what would that be?
It's like kind of, I don't know if it's like overused, but that everything's going to be okay. That's the first, I think, the quickest way to describe what I'm feeling. I think it's a journey and things are unfolding and they're going to lead you to things that you're going to work through and that it may take time to work through. I think another thing is to go with the flow and go with the changes. And sometimes discomfort can be a good thing. It's just, it depends on the severity of it. A lot of growth happens in discomfort.
Mhm.
Probably the next most important thing is to be true to yourself and to maybe even see or have that question and hold that question and see what that means to you and explore as life comes at you or unravels.
I think that's a lot of really good, wise things that are very useful. And yes, I hear strains of that sort of over and over. I think that's the wisdom that we gain as adults. We've all been through our bucket of stuff, however severe or not severe it is. And we've gotten through the other side. Mo-
Yeah.
Most people, they get through to the other side, scarred maybe, but they're battle scars, and
Yeah.
we can't go through life, unscathed. It's just not a
Hmm.
thing. And I think that's what makes us better people, or at least able to. I think the people who are most scarred are the most equipped to help other people get through their traumas and get through their scarring situations. So we don't like feeling those things.
Yeah, definitely not.
But I think it's good to hear that even going through something as traumatic as the bipolar one diagnosis and everything that comes with it, because it's like like here's your diagnosis, but the
Yeah.
experience that like sort of leads to the diagnosis is
Yep.
a tragic one. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, and it's still a journey.
Mm,
And I think one of the biggest pulls for me of getting into this field is just because of what I've gone through and the information and experience I have. And there's more professions out there or professionals out there that have other views. And there's this big, broad view that I think, at least with my experience, seems to hide that. And so I'm trying to share this. And what I'm talking about is like transpersonal psychology, for instance, which most people probably have never heard of it. And so transpersonal, that term refers to things beyond the person. So what we may call our normal waking consciousness, William James calls that a special type of consciousness, but everything outside of that. So we're talking about things people might call paranormal, or it's been renamed anomalistic psychology now.
mm,
um, Mediums, channeling, spiritual, mystical, just everything beyond, even peak human experiences like climbing Mount Everest and boom, having this breakthrough, or being on a stage, whatever, things along that nature. And so transpersonal experiences is what transpersonal psychology is about. And it's how do these experiences cause growth and transformation
mm,
for a person? And
mm,
so that's what the psychology in a nutshell is the study of.
mm,
But they're not really recognized entirely by the mainstream, and they're still going through struggles, kind of making a full name. So
mm.
some of what I said can be blurry because not all of the transpersonal psychologists agree with a same definition of what it is.
Hopefully, the scientific process will help to parse that out over time.
Yeah,
We didn't always have vaccines, and then somebody came out with this idea, and it took years and years and years of testing and prodding and trying, and then it
yeah,
became something that's mainstream. So maybe
yeah.
in time, and maybe you can be one of the leaders of such a
We'll,
thing.
we'll see what happens.
Happens. So wrapping this up, I
Mhm.
want you to tell me three-ish self-care practices that you do now to help to center or to regulate yourself.
Exercise, something similar to yoga, dancing, singing, or channeling, which chakra toning channeling, which kind of correlates with the singing and dancing part, meditation, and then journaling or reflection and being around a community, being with people,
Mhm.
safe environment, friends, family. Well, I forgot how many I
That's
mentioned, but
okay. No,
those,
you can
yeah.
keep going because
Oh,
I truly believe that the more, oh, wait just a second, my phone is ringing. I think that you can never have too many self-care strategies, options. And I think the more that you have that you can lean into, the easier it is when you're really feeling dysregulated to kind of like find your center and, if this doesn't work, well, maybe this one will.
yeah,
So that's why I have
yeah,
no problem with people sharing more than three.
cool.
Well, we've come to the end of our
Wow.
interview. No, it kind of goes quickly. It kind of goes
Yeah, it
quickly.
does.
But thank you, Robert Lee,
Yeah, thank you.
for sharing this. Like most of the things that an adolescent goes through, even when you work closely with them, and I think we work fairly closely together, you see what they let you see, and what they decide to share with you. For you to share this with me 15-ish years later is really valuable for me, because I'm still in it. Like I'm still there. And so anything that I can glean from talking to people who have been through it and come out to the other side, is what I want to try and help my current students, as they're navigating this insanity of
Yeah,
adolescence.
yeah, I'm happy to share more because I know it definitely is useful. And
And actually, I wanted to ask you,
yeah.
because you had said that you're in an ashram. Can
Mhm.
you sort of describe what an ashram is and what is the experience
Oh,
like?
okay, yeah. I think the official definition or something is just that it's a community or retreat for spiritual or religious practices or like-minded individuals, probably. I'm not sure if that fits. But so the experience here in this ashram, I've been told, from a volunteer who was here who went to tons of different ashrams is very unique in that it doesn't follow, I think it's Sivananda, the lineage and the practices directly. The main teacher here that started this ashram, what they call like a guru, and his like nickname is Guruji. He saw things differently. He was a psychiatrist, neurosurgeon, or some other things, and so he integrated the Vedantic knowledge with that. He has this more of a free flow thing going on here. And so the typical days here, there is a fire ceremony and meditation at 9 till 10. Then there's like little readings from like the Upanishads, which some other things from the guru here, and then Sanskrit lessons. Then there's lunch, and then toward the end of the day, there is another meditation at 7. So the same thing, without the lessons after that.
Mhm,
Um, and then in between and different days, there's yoga classes held by different instructors.
mhm.
And pretty much if you're a volunteer here or if you're a guest here, you can attend all of these. And the beauty here is that you have the complete freedom to skip everything and go to nothing. So whatever you want to, and you go in late if you want, there's no stress, nothing. And
There's no
there's
expectation. That's what
there's
they
no expectations.
mm,
Yeah. So everyone's kind of here just either relaxing, enjoying the peacefulness of the environment, or attending things, asking questions, or learning. And the people that have been here for many years, especially that have studied under the guru or studied these practices, they're quite a wealth of knowledge and can be quite good guiders. So sometimes you can chat them up, and they're happy to chat. They're here just kind of for that purpose. A lot of wisdom held here and a good container for growth.
How long have you been there, and how long is your intention to stay? Is there an end idea?
So I've been here for over 3 weeks, and I'm gonna stay. I've committed to stay until the end of August.
Mhm,
So I went full work exchange after 2 weeks, which means I don't pay for anything, food or living, and I get to attend everything here. And so afterwards, I'm really not sure. I may go back to working in HVAC controls, automation, or I may go back to school. I haven't entirely decided on that yet.
Mhm.
I may even stay here and go to school because there are a lot of remote programs these days. I'll see what happens. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that. This is sort of
Yeah.
a world that I've never, understood or really knew about. So I'm glad that you were kind enough to share all of this with me.
Yeah.
And anybody who's listening, thank you for coming on the podcast. And everybody, tune in next week for episode 20, 2 decades.